Hello and welcome back to Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. So, since last time I've done a little bit of menu bar, sorting out. Not a huge amount, but I've just basically separated things into buffs a weapon, debuffs an enemy, does something good to an ally. These ones are just pure attack spells. I did notice we had Disrupt Undead, which might actually have been useful when we were fighting all those undead a while back, which is just a ranged touch attack, which is pretty nice, and it does 1d6 points of damage, which is a fairly good one. I mean, our weapon already did damage to them, so maybe it's not that useful, but it could have been useful for one or two surprise rounds, potentially. But yeah, I'm going to try and keep it organized, and I also want to organize all of the other ones that we have, but that does involve leaving base, which, yeah, we're not going to do right now, because right now is time to talk to Darren, and then to go and read a bunch of the books that we got. So, let's have a little talk to this guy. The Defender's Heart is a splendid choice for the Crusaders' outpost. The very sight of these walls brings back fond memories of drinks and revels. The drinks were really good, by the way. Okay, let's see where we want to go. I don't think I want to start with the people say you're deliberately trying to annoy Queen Galfrey. That seems like a later question. What made you want to join my party seems like a good first question. You mean instead of carousing far away from Canabris with a small army of mercenaries to protect me, I will get to that. You see, when you appeared at my door out of nowhere, awash with bravery and heroism, and started tossing demons around like rag dolls, I thought that your company might be more exciting than my usual crowd of syphophantic hangers-on. You seemed competent and mysterious at the same time, so I decided that a little demon hunting wouldn't hurt, especially with such an intriguing entourage. That party had been growing staler with every passing second anyway. Needless to say, I'm not here for long. I shall return to the capital, or even one of my country estates, as soon as we reclaim the city. Crusades' bellowing commanders row upon row of identical tents. This is not the life for me. But I will certainly remember you and our adventures together. For a week, or perhaps even longer than that. Okay, so he's not planning on staying with us long. Now, my understanding of the game is that the scope might be slightly larger than the city, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something's going to happen that's going to galvanize him into staying, or maybe he will just leave. Well, let's see. I'd like to talk about life in Mendev and the Crusade. Ask, I'm all ears. You don't really like Crusaders, do you? Oh, quite the opposite. When I think about how many devoted heroes are willing to protect this world against the demonic threat, I feel so inspired. Inspired to continue indulging my vices while they fight to keep me safe. Imagine being someone like me, someone who has everything they can possibly desire. Youth, beauty, wealth, an honest wish to live and enjoy living, but vanishingly few ways to put it all to any use. The fact that the word fun itself is not yet outlawed in Mendev must be due to some bureaucratic oversight. You can celebrate your victories solemnly, you can wet your whistle after a challenging battle, but what about real fun, joys, pleasures? I can't remember a single evening at court without someone chastising me for my banquets, my lovers and mistresses, my luxuriant clothes, everything. It would have been a lot easier to tolerate all those hypocrites if they took a break once in a while. Instead, there was a constant fuss about how I wasn't doing anything for the greater good, and how I only brought shame to my royal cousin. Okay, well, what's your opinion on Mendev today in general? It doesn't exist. Darren scowls. It is a frontier country that has attracted every utopian adventurer and fanatic from all over the world for more than a century. It is a place where strangers outnumber the locals, especially in the cemeteries. The population of Mendev, for the most part, consists of humans and other races not exactly known for their longevity, so the current generation of Mendevians were born in the shadow of the Worldwound and raised by the Crusades. I might be the last person to complain about the decline of traditions and the lack of character in our country, but I also happen to come from one of Mendev's most ancient lineages. Its history is bred deep upon my bones. My tutors told me stories about my heritage, the galleries, libraries, and even the interiors of the manors I grew up in were filled to the brim with memories of events long past. There are many heroes of old Mendev among my glorious ancestors, or at the very least patrons and contemporaries of such heroes. Does anyone actually remember them now? I don't think so. These days Mendev has its own heroes, in shining armor and with holy fire in their eyes. I myself remember how several streets that once celebrated my ancestors were renamed in honor of some crusaders who had died in a heroic fashion. None of the citizens remember the old crossing festival that was eventually replaced by the Armasse. The holidays even share the same date. Pretty much the only authentic thing about Mendev now is its endless war with the demons. And is there a point in bemoaning this state of affairs? What's gone is gone, but at least we are no longer some tiny godforsaken northern kingdom. Well, that's something, isn't it? Okay, so he's kind of pining for the fact that there is no true Mendevians left, because obviously everyone's just coming in and being imported. And then there's also like a loss of the old holidays. Interesting. It's kind of similar, this holiday showing the same date, to how Christianity got a hold of things, where it just said, hey, this pagan holiday, it's our holiday now, and it's related to this thing. Many of like the big Christian holidays and times are all just like pagan things where they're like, no, we're just going to rebrand it as Christianity now. So it's kind of a similar thing. What do you think of our enemies? Do you mean the demons themselves or their followers? The former deserve to be cleansed with heavenly fire for their unholy origin alone, and the latter for their idiocy. I don't understand why a sane person would submit themselves to Deskari or Cabriri. Alright, Lady Nocticula almost seems like a bearable enough mistress, yet there are so many other cultists. They've tried to recruit me twice already, and I'm not even that old. First, a pretty tiefling girl tried to seduce me, and then they came to me with promises of Lord Baphomet's endless boons. I still wonder what exactly the old hornhead could offer me that I don't already have. I think that's where he's struggling to find out things, is he doesn't really understand people who don't, have things provided for him. Sounds like he's a bit out of touch. You know what I've been thinking? Every shopkeeper knows this trick, an enticing offer along the lines of, 1 in every 100 buns from my bakery contains a silver coin, and of course a hired actress to make a memorable show of finding said coin in her sweet roll. And there you have it, hundreds of gullible fools storm the shops hoping to win a prize for themselves. I think the infamous Areelu Vorlesh was such an actress for the Lords of the Abyss. Petty Sarkonian witch who became the uncrowned queen of the Worldwound, waited upon hand and foot by demon lords. Only instead of visiting a bakery, the gullible fools rush to join the cultists. We have an army of unbelievably powerful supernatural invaders from another dimension hellbent on destruction and domination, and what do these fools do? They serve them willingly as pawns and lackeys, hoping against hope that someday their masters will notice them. You won't believe how delighted I am to be so vain and self-absorbed. These sins protect me against the demonic temptation better than any virtue. I mean, he's kind of got you there. What can you offer somebody who loves only themselves? You can't offer them more of themselves. They already have it. Well, I can't think of anything else at the moment. Wonderful. Can I ask you some personal questions? You can try. Okay, let's see what we're going for. Let's start with 4. You don't seem especially keen on helping people, but your knowledge of healing is truly impressive. What prompted your interest in that? Ah, if you really want to try out everything life has to offer, you also have to understand how to deal with the consequences. I'm not talking about a simple hangover, mind you. Ah, so if you're going to do dangerous things, you got to know how to heal yourself. Makes a lot of sense. Do you enjoy being mean to everyone? Yes. And here I thought you were hurling insults at people purely by accident. Darren laughs. This time his smile is surprisingly soft. I like your way with words. What did you expect me to say if I wanted to make a good impression? Something along the lines of, I'm not mean, I'm just being honest with myself and everyone else. That's what people use as an excuse when they want to keep up their saccharine facade while still saying whatever nasty little thoughts spring to mind. That is not what I do. I have no hidden agenda. I'm just as much of an insufferable prick as I seem to be. Some people are simply begging for a good dose of mockery, so who am I to deny them? I don't give a damn if anyone holds a grudge against me, which is why I don't even try to avoid it. Okay. What do you hate the most? The feeling of helplessness, the lack of control over my own life. Darren replies without thinking, then he adds, with obvious sarcasm, Oh, and onion rings, of course. I'd murder the person who came up with those abominations. I don't know, I quite like a good onion ring. You do occasionally get the ones where they decide they're not going to make them crispy and they're going to make them slimy, and that I can't be dealing with, but, you know, a good crispy onion ring, it is fairly okay. What do you cherish most in life? There are far too many things that I cherish to fit them all in a single conversation. Believe it or not, but I might be one of the most life-loving people you've ever known. Darren smiles, his eyes are gleaming with something different from his usual impudence and irony. There's a dreamy air about him all of a sudden. I rarely meet anyone who embraces the joys of living as enthusiastically as myself. There are so many exciting and beautiful things in the world. It should be illegal to waste your time on anything you do not enjoy. And I am not afraid to repeat that to anyone's face, should it be Deskari or his demonic herd, or Hyomede and the Lightbringer herself. Okay. Do you have any good stories about your past exploits? I've got plenty, but I have to warn you that even the most outrageous debauchery sounds far less thrilling when you are not the one doing the debauchery. Still, since you asked, I suppose the worst mess I've ever got myself into was when I staged my own kidnapping. I was once in correspondence with one of the Riverland nobles, the young Lord Lebeda. I think we met him in Kingmaker. And he told me about his days as a hostage to a group of bandits, and this made me wonder what it would be like, and I thought that it might be fun to set up a little experiment. I engineered my own kidnapping by a certain gang through a chain of intermediaries and hired actors. Those fellows took the job very seriously. They caught me by surprise, killed my 2 bodyguards, and even tied me up. Of course, the whole thing seems preposterous now, but it seemed like an ingenious idea at the time. The employers had told the kidnappers that they were to keep me safe and sound, and another group of mercenaries in disguise was watching the spectacle from afar, ready to interfere in case anything went wrong. It turned out to be a terrible idea nonetheless. It wasn't in the least bit fun or exciting. No way, are you telling me being kidnapped wasn't fun? Sure, those bandits had been unable to torture or hurt me physically in any way, but they had plenty of other non-invasive methods of humiliation in their arsenal. Taking almost all of your clothes off and splashing ice-cold water all over you, for example. Ugh. I can't even remember if I said anything truly offensive to provoke them. Even though I initially planned to let them go after the ransom, their overly emotional reactions made me change my mind. I told my mercenaries to hang them all on the spot. I suppose the whole ordeal taught me a valuable lesson, which is that I am not built for hardships and trials. Yeah, you did just tell me that your bodyguards were killed. That's fairly bad. You just told me that a couple of your bodyguards died during the staged kidnapping. Does that mean that 2 innocent people lost their lives so that you could have a bit of fun? Darren pales a little, but not out of shame. Oh, spare me. It irks me beyond all measure when I hear about the suffering of innocents. He sighs, looks away and continues in a flat, polite tone. Yes, the bodyguards died. Guarding nobles is a dangerous job, and they were well aware of the risk. I don't really see a problem with that. Besides, they proved their incompetence. They would have stood no chance against real kidnappers. Yes, I'm starting to see why you're listed as neutral evil. Your cruel jokes bring people nothing but misery. And... so that was a stupid story, and now I'll tell you a truly brilliant one. Prelate Hulrun had always strictly prohibited any public celebrations in Canabris, and he always picked on me for my lack of respect for the fallen and whatnot. His grumbling annoyed me so much that one day I drove 4 barges into the city harbour and set up a celebration on their decks. The ships on the river don't fall under the prelate's jurisdiction, you see, so all he could do was snarl at me from the embankment. I, for one, did not forget the old boy. The main attraction of the festivities involved an Inquisitor of Iomedae dancing and roasting beautiful witches on illusory bonfires, taking off his clothes with every new victim. The spectacle was so heated, in every sense of the word, that the prelate almost had a stroke. Darren gives you a mischievous smile. You can't say that the prelate didn't have it coming. I still consider that one of my finest ideas of all time. Should the Crusaders ever succeed in their efforts against the Worldwound, I will do my utmost to get permission to hold a grand public celebration, rivers of wine free of charge, an obligatory parade, and a carnival in the evening. A contest for the most provocative succubus costume with a hefty prize in gold. Another contest where the participants have to fish a sausage out of a wine jar, blindfolded with their hands tied behind their backs. The wine will symbolize the blood of all the dead heroes of the war, and the sausage, well, they'll find a heroic meaning for that as well. Over the years, the commemoration of the greatest victory of light over darkness will turn into an ordinary holiday, a fine excuse to get sloshed and rut like animals in the streets. Okay, well, I think it's time to ask a less happy question. I've heard stories about the tragedy that befell your family. I hope you don't feel obliged to offer me your insincere condolences on this unfortunate occasion. My whole family, my entire noble line, they all died. And demons are to blame. It's not like I actually loved any of my relatives except for my mother, but... well, what's gone is gone. The family crypts are full of corpses, all covered in dust and shadows of the past. I have no more questions. Alright. People say that you're deliberately trying Queen Galfrey's patience. Is that true? Does it even matter? All of Mendevian high society has declared war on me. They either despise me or they're trying to steer me back onto the right path, and I'm doing everything in my power to keep them on their toes. I relish the prospect of all the fun this mess in Canabris will bring. Theron grins from ear to ear. I shall either commission a song about the great Canabris fiasco from a certain talented bard, or confuse the jewelers with a rather tall order, a batch of silver dragon toys with detachable heads. Give me a week and they will be in every shop in the capital. Well, let's see where we're going for this. Yeah. The heroic dragon who died for our future deserves respect, not your mockery. She is dead and doesn't really care. I shall enjoy 3 or 4 minutes of rather pleasant thoughts about the rage of those sanctimonious fools who pestered me the most. Well, I should go. Goodbye. So we learned a little bit more about Darren, and we've basically learned that he will do whatever interests him, whatever is in his interest, and he's pretty much interested in himself. So, yeah, alright. I see where his neutral evil comes from, but it's more a neutral self-obsession, which isn't quite as bad as it could have been. Right, now we have a lot of books. I'm not going to lie, there are a lot of books to read, and we're going to read them all. So, get ready. So, let's start. I'm just seeing whether there's any we've already read that we can get rid of here. I don't believe that there are. Nope, not that one. We have read those two, so we can skip that one. Yeah, so none there. Can't skip that one. Can't skip that one. Can't skip that one. And can't skip that one. Oh my lord, that's a lot of books. Right, let's start. 1,000 Revolutions. For the third night in a row, I've dreamt of the Grey Gardeners knocking at my door. I cannot believe it is my turn to be cut down by a blade washed in the blood of 1,000 revolutions, as a wave of popular outrage washes over me as my head tumbles down the steps of the scaffold. We take up the sword, and by it we shall perish. Once we struck down the Imperial scum, but now it is we who must face the blade. The insurgent beast called Revolution will never be sated. It needs new victims. This time it's my comrades and I. The cruelty of the hoarders in power echoes in the cruelty of the paupers now intoxicated by their own freedom. We wanted change, well, here it is. This is a country now of mad fanatics, fighting their treacherous past every day. Former friends are today's foes. My workshop is being converted into a secret headquarters. If I could do it all over again, I would repair to my easel and refrain from the cause that has sent me down this path. Okay, so a little bit of information, I assume, about Mendev, as this is talking about. Potentially? I don't know. It could just be anywhere, I suppose, of somebody regretting a revolution. Adventures of a Fearless Crusader. Briggy the Sausage Maker. By Berthamil from Pitax. The Sharp Word Publishing Company. Is that the same publishing company that you can set up in Kingmaker? I'm not sure, but I think it might be. For dinner, the wounded were served cabbage soup. This didn't surprise them in the slightest. They'd had the same dish for dinner for a week. The hospital's residents used to be lucky enough to get potatoes and even turnips sometimes. But about a month ago, the Knights of the Order of the Thrice Holy Shining Sun and Dissipating Darkness Scimitar of our beloved goddess Sarenrae, what a name, accidentally shot a catapult the wrong direction and annihilated the cart of a farmer who supplied the hospital with these vegetal delicacies. Ever since, the wounded only had cabbage soup for dinner, occasionally with a bit of protein when the odd cockroach crawled into the pot. After enjoying their delightful meal, the wounded stuffed their smoking pipes with something which rather more resembled hay than tobacco. Their bad habits demanded the inhalation of some smoke or other after mealtime, but with these practical matters happily resolved, they fell to talking. "Which demon do you think is the most dangerous?" asked Worlesh the spearman, scratching the stub of his leg with the stub of his arm. "I think it's the Abracandillus. Those monsters are cunning and sneaky, almost like the Varisians, and their teeth are even sharper. Look." He illustrated his point for his comrade by holding up his remaining fingers, 2.5 of them. "It depends on the way you look at it," answered Gregley the artillerist, though she could hardly look at it at all. Her eyes were covered with bandages. "Your Abracandillus are easy pickings, but Baelor's are a different thing. He hits you with his whip, and your eyes pop out." She waved her pipe energetically, casting its contents onto Worlesh's face. While the latter was coughing and brushing himself off, Bridgie joined the conversation. "Baelor's and Bricandillus are alright, I suppose, but I'd say there isn't a demon in the world scarier than a regular louse. Of course, the other demons can teleport places, but the louse doesn't even need to do that. Wherever you look, it's already there. Then he stuck his hand under his shirt, pulled out the subject of his speech from somewhere in his armpit, and demonstrated it to his friends. You can run away from a big demon with a whip, but who can run away from lice? They sting everyone, from the foot soldier to the general. Not even the queen herself isn't immune. Now, you might say it doesn't do much harm. After all, how much blood can one louse drink? But I'm telling you, think how much soldier's blood they've drunk all together. It's gotta be a whole sea, wouldn't you think? More than all the demons in the abyss. And if anyone tells me a louse isn't a demon, then aha to them. Could a monster like that come from anywhere besides the abyss? It's kind of funny. I like it. Right. Let's go through here. Battle in the Valley of Fire by Luris Aldori. Argon was knocked flat. He laid gasping, arms spread, a lump of rage rising in his throat. He remembered his dream, black soil, red ravens in the empty sky, their coarse cloaks ringing in his ears, like a taunt. Croaks ringing in his ears, that makes a lot more sense. Choral would never take Rosland, never. Aldori sprang to his feet, as if the blood-soaked soil was driving him forward. With a cry of rage, the Sword Lord rushed into battle. The sky turned scarlet with blood as he furiously chopped off his enemies' heads. The scarlet horizon drew closer, and its roar nearly drowned out the sound of battle. Argon looked to the sky, and a fiery blast descended upon him. These were no ravens that circled above him. The fearsome breath of the red dragons of Choral melted the soldier's armor and turned living flesh to ash and dust. Okay, so just a general bit of lore, but still, it's a bit, bloody and vicious. Cooking Almanac of the Inner Sea by Jubilos Narthropple. It is perhaps Avastin's most popular dish in the capital of Cheliax. It is baked in a cheese crust and sprinkled with lemon juice. The local fishermen use a different cooking method in Quadera, which is on the opposite end of Avastin. There you will find it finely chopped and mixed cold ingredients. The exact origin of the dish remains unknown, but is generally believed to have been invented in Andoran and spread around the globe by seafarers and pilgrims. It's served as plain pate in its most basic version. To prepare it, soak the herring in a spiced marinade and mince it into a spreadable paste. Add a mashed tart green apple, hard-boiled quail eggs, and the freshest butter that you can find, and half an onion. The list of ingredients may vary in the inland regions. In the region of Near Mathis, beef or lamb is used for the snack. I once tasted a highly original and equally highly disgusting version cooked with milk and mushrooms on the border of Druma. So Jubilos Narthropple, if you don't know, was a companion in the first game, in Kingmaker. And I think this book might have been in it, or he might have just referenced it. Either way, I believe that's what that's from. Fairy Tales of Avastin. A long, long time ago, in a time before remembering, there was a furious god known as Rovagug, a terrible giant worm with 1,000 teeth and claws. He devoured every world in his path, one after another. But the great gods were displeased with the beast and delivered unto Rovagug their scourge. Many laid down their feuds to combine forces: mighty Torag, brilliant Sarenrae, vicious Asmodeus, crafty Calistria, cold-blooded Pharasma, and many, many others. Together they faced Rovagug as he arrived to swallow Golarion. The goddess of the sun, Sarenrae, forbade Rovagug's death, so the gods imprisoned the fiend deep in the ground, shackled and sleeping. Asmodeus himself would keep the keys to his bonds. The terrible monster remains there still, asleep in his prison. Whenever Rovagug rolls over in his sleep and scratches his back against his prison walls, the earth trembles and volcanoes spit fire. So Rovagug, I believe, is the god of monsters. I might be wrong about that. Right. Guide for Travelers, Hunters, Explorers of the River Kingdoms, Volume 5, Monsters and Beasts. Now, I'm sure this book was in Kingmaker, but anyway. Will-o-wisp. An amusing glowing ball which looks harmless and doesn't arouse any natural suspicion. Pretends to be a guiding light in the marshes but leads travellers to certain death. The agonizing fear of their victims is this monster's nourishing dinner. If you manage to resist their tricks, make sure you have some electrical protection. The monster electrocutes any visitors it fails to lure into its terror. Werewolf. Werewolves prefer to hunt in groups and attack lone travelers. It's entirely possible that a Varisian camp or troop could turn into a pack of bloodthirsty lycanthropes under cover of darkness. Ordinary weapons stand little chance against them, but a silver blade greatly increases your chances of survival. Primals. Powerful creatures of the primal realm occasionally visit this world for amusement. It's best to stay out of a primal's way. Don't fight it. It's extremely dangerous, but if a life is at stake, resort to cold steel. Alright, so silver against werewolves, cold steel against primals, and don't follow will-o-wisps. Got it. In Search of Joy, Confessions of a Heretic. I take a deep breath and stand still. I long to absorb every moment of joy, inhale the evaporation of someone else's soul from their thickening blood. The border between reality and dream fades. It seems that everyone beyond the wall can hear the throbbing in my head, but it's only my fantasy. A ringing silence fills the room. The fifth sacrifice has been made. My mistress, the most beautiful of goddesses, will be happy. I will take care of everything. Fragrant flowers, cut at the maximum of their beauty, are now part of the masterpiece which is worthy of Shaylin herself. So what if the narrow-minded priests rejected me and my gift? I serve the never-fading rose herself, not the worms that bite into her stem and suck at her life-giving juices. It won't be long now before I finish my job. I've already found the material. Her eyes are grey and her hair is dark blonde. She is fading into the dirt. I will rewrite her destiny. Alright, this sounds like he killed someone and is potentially going to resurrect her as a necromancer? I don't know. I'm not sure what we're being told there. Right, we've definitely read on the nature of the divine. And, Prodigal Sons. It's done, I said. Milliken studied me with narrowed eyes. You look awfully clean, he said. Where's the knife? In answer, the first shouts went up from the inn. Fire! Screamed Ilna, and the other voices joined hers. In an instant, Milliken's entrepreneurial instincts took over and he sprang for the door, tossing the crossbow aside. Outside, the roof of the inn was already smoking oily black against the sunset. Licking through the thatching in places? Not sure what that's meant to be. I think there's a letter missing potentially. With a scream of pain, Milliken ran for the creek. I looked to Fargus, needing no further cue. We each grabbed up armfuls of supplies and sprinted off in the opposite direction. After 10 minutes of leaped brambles and ducked branches, we stopped to catch our breath. Back the way we came, the smoke was still visible, though the sounds had faded to just the faint and frantic pealing of a church bell. That was close, Fargus said, leaning against a tree and breathing hard. Agreed, I puffed, staring down the cloak full of bread that now made up our sole possessions. Then the sound of the bell reminded me of something. About what you said back there, I asked. You said Shaylin. I thought you were a priest of Desna. Fargus grunted. A man's faith is a personal thing, he said, tying up a cloak. Now, shut up and keep running. And we did. Maybe that's related to the other story that we have here. Maybe not. Okay. It's kind of like it's like the middle of a story, but we haven't quite got it all yet. Secret overlords the essence of world order. Until recently, we knew this world as it was described in books and stories. A sewer torn apart by hyenas that separate us from nations and borders, oppress us with extortion and lies, and assert their authority and power. However, someone else's hand rules these slaves who act like masters. It's a threat far more intimidating than a handful of arrogant fools. Our lands are secretly ruled by the most ancient creatures of Golarion, the inhabitants of the ever-dark depths, who know both past and future. People are led along paths they cannot see and do not have the power to leave, to an end known only to the hidden masters. Some insist that the signs are purely coincidental, but they point to a vast conspiracy. Only a fool can fail to see how the myriad connections weave into a great cobweb, or they have submitted their very will and sworn their allegiance to our unseen masters in the depths. So this could be pointing to a conspiracy in the world, but I think that this is talking about the GMs and the players. You know, specifically the GMs, inhabitants of the Everdark Depths who know both past and future, who lead people along paths. I'm just saying, it sounds like a GM to me. Anyway, yeah. I think that's what they're getting at. Right. This one, Shadows of Absalom by Pax Grumetra. So I think this is a play. Noan Quant peeped through a slit in the window shutter. The visitor was staggering at the porch. Noan had promised himself many centuries ago that he'd never have to deal with halflings again, after the case of the Clockwork Head. Even the bleaching is better than some adventures. I believe bleaching is the idea that when a gnome stops trying to find new things, they start to grey out and start to bleach. And I believe that it's related to staying in the world too long and not being where because gnomes come from like a different dimension. It's related to that. So effectively, yeah, gnomes are always kind of outgoing and crazy because that's the way that they stay alive. They thrive on it. At least that's that's how I remember it. It went way into it in Kingmaker. However, there was something disturbing in the visitor's appearance. Something was wrong. What do you say, Kexi? His assistant sat at the next window with yarn and knitting needles in her hands. Look at his clothes, they're second-hand. He's a hobo. He is, but you're not quite right. Look at his feet. Kexi looked, trying to make out at least something in the faint light of the lantern above the door. Are those? He was shackled. Rather than answering, the gnome stepped towards the door. We shall need a doctor. As if to prove his words, the guest faltered and collapsed onto their knees, and fell head first onto the doorstep. Okay, so a little bit of a novel there. The Crusades as Seen by Ordinary Folk by Tullius Mara. A story recorded by Tullius Mara from the words of Warren, a peasant from the village of Darkfords. Want to know why they call old Genty the Crusader? This is what happened. Ogar the farmer died, leaving 3 sons. The 2 older ones divided the land and lived their life, and Genty, the youngest one, was a square peg in a round hole, as they say. He only knew how to bask under a tree and eat pies. What was he to do? Where could he apply himself? So he got a rusty old sword from the blacksmith's backyard, mounted his skinny horse and rode off, over the hills and far away. Sooner or later he came to a castle. Inside it there was a knight's wife, sitting around waiting for her husband to return from the Crusades. So our Genty sat down next to her, saying, Fair lady, your husband is a great man and you deserve all compassion. I am a crusader myself and used to fight the horrible spawn of the Worldwound. And so he rambled. He sat behind the stone walls for a month, gained 10 pounds, and became even more well-groomed and in the end looked like a baron. But he grew bored of the knight's wife. She was always pale and sad and cried for days praying to Sarenrae. So Genty waved her goodbye and went on his way. He rode and saw a mill on the river, and a miller's wife, rosy cheeks, plump as a partridge. Our Genty cozied up to her, saying, Lady Miller's wife, does your husband happen to be at home? No, my good sir. Last year the Fae dragged him into the river, she said. So Genty invited himself to stay at the mill. He lay on a soft bed, eating pies, drinking beer, and walking around the village. He had some nerve, told everyone at the village tavern what a seasoned crusader he was. He feared no demon and promised to show them what's what. So one moonlit night, when he was huffing and puffing on the widow, he felt her grabbing his back so strongly he couldn't stand it. He looked down and there she was, a crone, horrible, like a skeleton with a crooked nose, eyes like embers, a hollow stomach, ribs sticking out, and claws instead of nails, stinking of ripened grave. Try as he might, Genty couldn't get away. The crone held him tight, hissing, Where are you going, my sweet crusader? Come on, put your bun in my oven. Then she stuck out her long tongue and licked her rotten teeth. Somehow Genty wiggled away, leaving plenty of his skin and meat on her claws. He ran from the mill in a panic, ran all the way to the village, naked and bleeding. So he's running and yelling, Demons! Demons! Well, the locals gathered with their axes and pitchforks and came to the mill, but it was empty. The crone was gone. They did find an ugly corpse in the basement, though. They knew it was the miller's wife by her hair and clothes. That's when Genty lost his mind. Now he sits under his brother's windows, staring into the distance, saying, "The demons are coming! The demons are coming!" That's the only thing he'll say. Alright. So, this is kind of like a story of, it's like a weird retelling of The Boy Who Cried Wolf, almost. I don't know. Or, don't say you're a crusader or the demons will get you. Something like that. Anyway, the last book we have to read, The Notes of a Traveling Priest. Ilthuliak by Tyrion Dean. Imagine this. A girl, whose name I shall not disclose, comes to town and immediately purchases the most expensive suburban villa. This newcomer spends unfathomable amounts of on charity, even returning several tragically perished citizens to life at her own expense. She's very young. Her rough speech and manners indicate that she's not of noble birth. This leaves the whole town wondering, how did this young lady come into possession of such a huge fortune, and why does she spend it so eagerly? These secrets were revealed to me when I was invited to the mysterious girl's house to provide healing services. The young lady reluctantly displayed something she's been hiding from everyone: terrible acid burns. She forestalled any questions with a single word: Ilthuliak. The monstrous black dragon's name was well known in the River Kingdoms. I knew I recognized the name! We killed it! in Kingmaker. Yes, that was a dragon in a cave just before a bridge. Yes, we killed it. Got it. Now I remember the name. She lived in the region for hundreds of years, inspiring terror and emptying settlements. Many experienced dragon hunters attempted to put a stop to her and all perished. No one knew where Ithuliak's lair was or where she would strike next. The wounds Ithuliak's acid breath left on my patient's body were terrible, but her soul was hurt much worse. The girl and her friends had found the lair of the dragon. They could have gathered hunters to destroy the monster, but instead they kept silent in search of profit. When the lair's mistress was absent, they would carry treasure out little by little. Ilthuliak suspected something was happening, so she set an ambush for the thieves, and they were dealt with cruelly. My patient pretended to be dead, surviving while the dragon devoured the bodies of her friends. She had much gold left at her disposal, but it came with the burden of memories that recalled devastated cities and countless people burned by acid. Unable to tolerate the guilt, the girl tried to atone for ill-gotten gains with good deeds. I was able to heal her physical wounds. When we parted, she told me she planned to spend the rest of her wealth organizing an expedition to Ilthuliak's lair to end the beast. I recently heard rumor that the villa has been abandoned for quite some time now. It's possible the owner left for other lands, but my heart tells me that her bones lie in the lair of Ilthuliak, the winged terror and plague to the River Kingdoms. Okay, that's cool. There's definitely a lot of references to Kingmaker in here, but that makes sense because I imagine that a lot of these books were actually in Kingmaker and then they were directly related to what's going on. You know, if you have a world like this, a living world that's going to grow, we just want to keep that, I think. Yeah. If you have a living world which is growing, you definitely want to just keep the books in it, because then, you know, as you add game, like say they add another 2 or 3 games like this, which they could easily do with adventure paths, you start building up more and more lore and more interesting things. That's Ember's Raven kind of flying around. That's neat. But yeah, anyway, we spent quite a lot of time talking, an actually really large amount of time talking now that I look at it. What I think we might do, just because it puts a nice little break in, is we're going to end the episode here, and then next time we're going to head out and find a storyteller, who I suspect might have a lot more lore for us. But anyway, thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, goodbye!